So, point 3, formation of coal beds, a product of massive short-term sedimentary activity. There are tremendous numbers of coal beds that exist all around the world, and in most parts of the geologic column, implying unimaginably great accumulations of metamorphosed vegetable matter. And we have pointed out the utter inadequacy of the uniformitarian subsidence theory to account for these beds. The physical evidence plainly and emphatically demonstrates the fact that the coal seams are water-laid deposits in which great agglomerations of plants were rafted down on the surface of the Deluge rivers. Then, now these are humongous rivers, worldwide flood, as it dissipated throughout the planet, one incident after another. These are rivers that would dwarf anything, that occurs today, even the big rivers that exist today. Then conveyed back and forth on the shifting currents until finally brought to rest in some basin of deposition. All these drowned plants and animals and man, to be followed by a reacting current from another direction bearing non-organic materials perhaps, then another current with a load of plant debris, and so on. So it's haphazard what occurs. This violent, cataclysmic series of events begun with multiple volcanoes and earthquakes and rain from above to the extent of what we see in the shallow seas around the continents now, the 7 continents. All that water was up in the sky in frozen, super frozen water, protecting the earth from ultraviolet radiation. Plants and animals and mankind lived much, much longer and much larger, bigger oxygen intake, because the oxygen levels were much higher also. The only evidence is cited in favor of the so-called peat-bog theory of coal formation, such as the upright trunks, the stigmaria, and so on, can, as we have seen, equally well or better be interpreted as resulting from the nature of the rafts of vegetation being floated into the final place of deposition by floodwaters. Dr. Heribert-Nilsson, after an extensive discussion of the physical and biological aspects of the coal seams and the 2 theories, I'll just fix spelling here, for their formation, the autochthonous, growth in place theory, and the allochthonous, A-L-L-O-C-H, auto and allo, water transported theory concurs. A steady autochthonous formation of the coal seams is just as improbable as was the autochthonous formation of the strata with fixed faunas and floras. This difficult situation makes it necessary to look. I transcribed these words from his video for autochthonous processes of immense magnitude and worldwide effects. Rapidly, huge amounts, not many millions of years. Coal can be formed instantly in the laboratory. Why not in worldwide flood with much more equipment available? This conclusion is doubly significant in that Dr. Heribert-Nilsson, who is a botanist and paleobotanist of wide ability and long experience, was not attempting to defend or expound the flood theory of geology in coming to his conclusions, but was literally driven to such a conclusion by the weight of the evidence. He has attempted to explain some of these things in terms of repeated cataclysms after the manner of Cuvier, but it is obvious that his conclusion as to the manner of coal formation fits imperfectly with the biblical deluge. The question may be raised as to whether the plant remains, even if water laid in the manner supposed by the allochthonous water transported theory could have been metamorphosed into coal in the relatively brief period of time since the flood. Lots of pressure. Well, you're buried under miles of water, 64 pounds per cubic foot, a couple, 3 miles up in the air. That plant matter, animal matter, whatever, live matter, now dead, now drowned, would be instantaneously formed into something like coal because it would leave nothing here but the carbon. Somehow, the impression prevails that immense ages would be necessary for coal to form, even after the materials had been deposited. Bacterial activity, pressure, and temperature have been generally assumed as the agents for converting peat-bog residues into coals. Recent studies have demonstrated their inadequacy. Apparently, the most likely agent is the application of shearing forces, and those would have been quite high during the post-deluge period of tectonic readjustment. Reference Irving A. Reger in his book. Nor would they require long ages to do the work. Stutzer has noted Petzold, 1882, describes very remarkable observations which he had made during the construction of a railway bridge at Alt-Breschach near Freiburg, that's Germany. The wooden piles, which had been rammed into the ground, were compressed by overriding blocks. An examination of these compressed piles showed that in the center of the compressed piles was a black coal-like substance. In continuous succession from center to surface was black and dark brown, light brown, and finally yellow-colored wood. The coal-like substance corresponded in its chemical composition to anthracite, and the blackened wood resembled brown coal. Otto Stutzer, Geology of Coal. So we have modern-day examples of what could have happened in the worldwide flood. No examples of how it could have arrived in long-term sequences, like millions of years. Stutzer also described various experiments which had, with some degree of success, attempted to synthesize coal in the laboratory through application of various stresses. For these and other reasons, Moore, the American coal geologist, says, from all available evidence, it would appear that coal may form in a very short time. Geologically speaking, if conditions are favorable, well, conditions would be unfavorable throughout the whole planet in the worldwide flood, largely, but all you need is a few, and there are millions and millions of opportunities for this thing to happen. And so, you got millions and millions of opportunities that would end up with lots of coal. And guess what we have? We have lots of coal. So the circumstances of something happen so quickly with such a huge extent, availability, all you need is just a second or two, wham, coal. Just like in the laboratory, synthetic coal. And we submit that conditions for its formation have never been so favorable before or since as during the deluge period, because things happen so quickly and such a huge scale that it was inevitable that this coal would form. Now we're looking at point 4, the Mesozoic strata dinosaur fossils. Proceeding higher in the supposed but falsely asserted geologic column, though not always, or even usually, higher in actual formational superposition, we come to the extensive so-called Mesozoic strata, including the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous systems. The index fossils for these strata are again marine organisms, especially the ammonites. Again, there are many different kinds of these and other characteristic marine creatures of the period, and apparently they fall into large numbers with more or less distinct horizons, which have been used as a basis for inter-regional and even intercontinental correlation. It is probable that these zones of similar assemblages of fossil rocks in rock strata can be explained on much the same basis as the zones of similar assemblages of trilobites and brachiopods in the Paleozoic strata, a worldwide flood. Okay? And things distribute themselves, or are distributed, by events in the worldwide flood as a result of earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, the tides caused by the earth, the moon, and the sun, in that order, and the constant change-up of one thing after another. One wave hits another, another wave comes from another location and deposits varying degrees, varying kinds of people, whatever the water picks up, plant, animal, rocks, sediment, and so on. And it's deposited according to some basic characteristic physical rules, sphericity and density. The larger the object, the less spherical it is. It'll float later on or be distributed later on. The smaller spherical, highly dense items like shellfish go to the bottom first. Sometimes they're already there. So the supposedly equivalent continental strata of the Mesozoic contain probably the most interesting of all fossils, those of the great dinosaurs. The question of the sudden extinction of these powerful creatures that supposedly ruled the earth for so long is still one of the great mysteries of uniformitarian paleontology. Because remember, we found dinosaur prints along the Paluxy River riverbed, the fossilized stone riverbed. So they had a number of them, quite a few of them, had human footprints in them. And we've looked at that, and we think that's better explained by a worldwide flood. And the book of Joel talks about dinosaurs being around as co-conspirators of the earth at the same time. Various theories have been suggested, such as destruction by volcanoes, changes in environments, eating of dinosaur eggs by increasing numbers of mammals, some sort of dinosaur disease epidemic, and so on. These are some of the theories that have been advanced to explain the sudden extinction of dinosaurs throughout the world. Each theory will explain the death of some dinosaurs in some places, but attempts to apply any of them, or combinations of them, to worldwide extinction have failed. This dinosaur story, we're talking about mainly the selective larger dinosaurs, because we have plenty of smaller lizards around all the time. This dinosaur story is like a mystery thriller with the last pages torn out. A most important part is missing. A most important part is missing for sure. This is true, and the paleontologist knows it. He also knows the riddle will probably never be resolved, especially on his own terms. J.M. Good. Well, J.M. Good, oops, let me take it out of italics and underline it. T. White, G.F. Stucker, The Dinosaur Quarry. Or at least it never will be solved as long as paleontologists insist on a uniformitarian explanation. The biblical deluge is a quite adequate solution. If representative dinosaurs were taken on the ark, presumably young ones, then it is likely that their final extinction is accounted for by the sharp changes in climate after the flood. On the other hand, some may have persisted for a long time, possible accounting for the universal occurrence of dragons in ancient mythologies. And Job talks about dinosaurs, big, huge animals with tails the size of tree trunks. That's not an elephant, got a tiny little tail, and so on. And sea serpents, also much larger than any sea dwellers now. Another mystery connected with the dinosaurs is the number of great dinosaur graveyards found in various parts of the world. The entombment of such numbers of such great creatures literally demands some form of catastrophic action. Jeez, getting interrupted all this time today. Where did I end up? Or at least it will never be solved as long as paleontologists insist on uniformitarian explanation. They don't consider any other alternative. The biblical deluge is a quite adequate solution. Yeah, I remember I said that. If representative